In this video, I'm giving my full review of the Triumph Tiger 900 GT Pro and Rally Pro. To get you up to speed quickly, we've had both bikes on loan from Triumph for a few weeks to ride and enjoy, with our biggest test being a 5-day trip away in the Yorkshire Dales. This was a really good test for the bikes because the trip was just under 300 miles away from my home in Surrey and required a lot of motorway to get to. When we got there was some epic scenery and roads to really put the bikes through their paces. Since we've had them, I think we've put over 1,200 miles on each bike, so we sort of feel like we know them fairly well. If you've watched any of my other videos, you'll know that I value a first impression because that's exactly what you get when you take a bike out for a test ride. Obviously, a full review is a nice contrast to that because the buzz of the new bike is gone and it leaves you with a more distilled opinion of the bike. Oh, and by the way, the other guy in the video is Jason, my mate. We ride together loads and he's sort of a silent partner on the channel in that he doesn't say anything in any of the videos or film hardly anything or do any editing or any logistics, but he does regularly give his 2 cents behind the scenes. So there is that. While we were away, we spoke a lot about the bikes and about the topic of the perfect bike came up loads. Everyone knows there's not such a thing as a perfect bike, but there is such a thing as a horse for a course. As a middleweight adventure bike, the wind protection on the Tigers wasn't as good as, say, a big tourer, but they could do motorway miles with loads of luggage and they had more than enough power for any speed or overtake. We both agreed that these are excellent bikes and pretty much perfect for the riding that we did on them that wasn't the motorway. And this video isn't going to be a full review in the sense that I'm going to discuss every nut and bolt, more of a collection of things I found interesting about the bikes that I thought you might like to know. These Tigers are comfortable bikes. I'm 6'1" with a 32-inch inseam and long arms and legs, and Jace is 6'6". Sometimes taller people feel cramped on bikes, not these. The bars, controls, tank, seat and foot pegs are all in the right place for the rider and nothing felt odd where it was. Very rarely can I ride all day on a bike, and I can honestly say that this bike's seat has got to be one of the most comfortable I've ever spent time on. It's soft but not too soft, and it's not a long seat, but when you're riding on the motorway every little change in position can count, and it's got a bit of movement back and forth to keep you from not sitting in exactly the same position all the time. Also, while we're on the motorway, both Jason and I were sitting on the pillion seat at times for another position. The 20-litre fuel tank feels good between your legs and it's not overly wide for a big tank. Also, our legs fit in the cutouts of it too. On the tank, I like how it goes all the way up the front there and it's a reasonable capacity, all while keeping the centre of gravity low on the bike. I wasn't sure about these plastic panels on the side of the tank here, but after having ridden the bike for a while, I can see that they'd be easy to keep your bike looking fresh by changing them if you scuff them with your legs instead of touching up or changing the entire tank. I've ridden the Triumph Tiger 1200s a lot and they're both great on and off-road, but they're physically much bigger and heavier. The 900s are lighter and easier to move around, obviously. I might choose a 1200 over a 900 if I was mainly doing long motorway miles or 2-up, but everywhere else I'd choose a 900. Triumph do make great engines and the ones on these Tigers are absolute crackers. When I first rode one of these 900s, I was concerned that I'd have to ride the engine hard because it was a Triumph triple and they had a bit of a reputation in my mind of being screamers. Don't know where that came from, but you know, it's not the case. You can chug around all day and enjoy yourself looking at things, or switch to sport mode and unleash the beast if you want to. I rarely unleash the beast these days, but I did on these bikes, and when you open them up, they really howl. If you don't know, the engine's a 888cc triple. Power of the engine on these Tiger 900s is 106.5 brake horsepower, and torque is 90 newton meters or 66.4 foot-pounds if you're in the States. Interestingly, the max power is all the way up at 9,500 RPM, which is the engine's red line. Max torque is at 6,850 RPM. Engine on both bikes is the same, and they have the same riding modes, which include road, rain, sport, off-road and rider configurable. The Rally Pro also gets off-road mode, which turns off the ABS on both brakes. As I said, you can ride it down low in the rev range and soft if you want to chug it around and take it easy. Good for long days in the saddle and when you need to relax. It's also a lot of fun in the middle of the power curve, and when you use the torque to build speed, it can also be scream too, and it will respond so well up top. By far my favourite way to ride this bike faster than chugging around was in the middle of its power curve. I like it there because you don't really need to be riding flat out to enjoy yourself, but you can still enjoy the engine. When you're riding it like this, the power in the mid-range is really addictive and lovely to keep changing into. I used all of the riding modes on the road, but I mainly stuck to rain and road. In rain mode, the bike's softer down low but not gutless, and it will respond very well if it needs to. For my riding style, I never really feel the need to change into sport modes of bikes, unless it's to try out how they feel, and it's the same with this one. It responds so much better in sport, but I can honestly say I don't feel like I need to go that fast or need that much power. If you like triples, you'll love this engine. If you've never tried one, you need to give it a go because it will surprise you. Radiators on the bike vent to your knees. When you're riding around on the bikes, you do notice it. It's nice to know that they're displacing the heat and they're doing their job, but they do make your legs hot. And on long days in the saddle or on hot days, it can be annoying. Also, those side panels look great for cooling, but when you're riding off-road, you'll need to get better guards to protect them from debris. Oh, and by the way, I'll go over my ideal spec and accessories that I think are good for this bike at the end of the video. I like the exhaust sound on this bike, and I didn't think I would because of its triple engine. Don't know why I thought that, maybe because the engines are higher revving than say a parallel twin of a similar capacity. The sound of it is nice and soft, and there was a distinct difference between these two bikes. Maybe because the Rally Pro's a press bike and it's had a hard life from day one, or more miles on it, or something, I don't know. When the engine's up at the top of the rev range, the exhaust is never really screaming too loud. The average fuel economy on both bikes while we had them was 58.25 miles per gallon, which is 48.5 if you're in the States. Interestingly, the GT Pro used 2.25% more fuel than the Rally Pro over the time that we had it. Maybe we rode the GT Pro harder, or maybe we rode the Rally Pro softer on the road. GT Pro was a brand new bike when we got it, so it could be that it's not running properly yet. I don't know. On long-haul motorway trips, the bikes are comfortable enough to ride and the engine will chug away all day, no worries. Hand-numbing vibrations through the bars and the pegs is almost non-existent. Some owners of earlier Triumph Tiger 900s had issues with vibration, and Triumph addressed it with significant upgrades to the bike that they made in 2024. I own a Yamaha Tenere World Raid, and after about 30 or 40 minutes on the motorway, I get numb hands that I need to manage, and then after about an hour I get a sore bum. Not on these Tigers. That doesn't happen. Clutch is light and 6-speed gearbox is lovely to go up and down. Clutch on the bike uses a slip and assist design, which is a sort of two-part system. Its slipper function prevents the rear wheel from locking up or hopping during aggressive downshifts by briefly disengaging the clutch plates, ensuring stability. The assist function uses engine torque to help engage the clutch, which makes it lighter. In practice, I don't think you really notice the slip feature working on the downshifts because it just works. And you'd probably need to compare it and contrast it to a bike that's got sort of a normal clutch to really feel the difference. Also, probably doesn't kick in unless you get your downshifts really wrong. Clutch pull on the bike is light though, and I didn't think it was heavy at all. Although it's got a quick shifter, as standard on these bikes, I mainly used it for going up the box, and coming down I preferred to use the clutch and match revs on the engine as you're going down the old-fashioned way. Going back down the box with a quick shifter can feel a bit notchy, like you're forcing it. I know it doesn't hurt the bike, but I feel like my riding's smoother when I ride like I'm used to instead of crashing down the box. Trellis frame on the bikes is nice to look at, and I really like the white one on the Rally Pro. Engine is a stress member on the bikes, which helps keep the frame stiff and weight low on them. While we were away, we had the opportunity to do some off-road on the bikes, but decided not to because the GT Pro didn't have a bash plate, and we didn't want to hit a rock or something and damage the underside of the bike. I have also made another video where I take the Rally Pro off-road and test it on these stock tyres, and I'll put a link to that video in this video's description. The Rally Pro's got a bash plate and guards which you can add to the GT Pro if you want. Handguards come standard on both these bikes and they're very strong, so you won't need to replace them with stronger ones like you do sometimes on some bikes. Plastic guards on here make the frame feel even between your legs and they stop you scratching the frame with your boots. Rubbers can be taken out of the foot pegs without any tools if you're riding off-road. Weight of the standard GT Pro is 222 kgs and the Rally Pro is 228. Obviously the Rally Pro has more suspension travel, different wheels and a bash plate. Stock seat can be adjusted up and down on these bikes. Seat height on the GT Pro goes between 820mm and 840, and the Rally Pro goes between 860mm and 880. Both bikes feel really stable to ride and neutral. The GT Pro isn't the quickest steerer in the world, but it responds well when you move your weight around physically on the bike. We use the main stand a lot on the bikes, and it was good for stopping in town and not leaning the bike over too much in tighter parking spots. Also good for loading the panniers on the side of the bikes because the bike's upright. Also looks like it attracts a fair bit of dirt under there too, so probably worth spending a bit of extra time cleaning under there if you want to keep it looking good. Suspension on both these bikes is great. I spent time dialing each of them into my weight before I took them away, and it really made a difference to how they felt. The GT Pro's got Marzocchi electronic suspension on the back, and it's got normal suspension on the front. I mean, not electronic. I used the electronic suspension on the GT Pro a lot when I was switching between luggage and no luggage. The Rally Pro doesn't have electronic suspension, but it does have manual preload on the back and preload adjusters on the front here too, which I like, and you don't always get that on bikes. We wound the preload all the way on the Rally Pro on the back when we were carrying luggage. I wound it off 10 clicks when I was riding it, so it matched the front more. Jason usually rode it how it was and wasn't fazed by what setting it was on like me. GT Pro's got 180mm of travel on the front and 170mm on the back. Rally Pro's got 240mm of travel on the front, forks, and 230mm on the back. Most people know this, but you definitely don't need the travel the Rally Pro has if you're only going to do road work on the bike. More travel makes the bike feel high and wallowy when you're cornering back and forth compared to the GT Pro. Also, when you're accelerating, the front goes up more, and when you're braking, there's more dive. So yeah, unnecessary to have long travel like this on the road. Both bikes have got compression and rebound damping on the forks. Only the Rally Pro has adjustable rebound damping on the shock, which I wound 3 turns on to stop the shock bobbing up and down. Manual suggested 1.25 turns, but that was too much. Too much bobbing, I mean. The GT Pro's got electronic suspension, and you can adjust that from soft to sport. I ran it closer to the sport setting to stop it bobbing too much. Wheels are cast aluminium on the GT Pro and spoked on the Rally Pro. GT Pro's got a 19-inch wheel on the front and a 17 on the back, and the Rally Pro's got a 21-inch on the front and an 18 on the back. Tyres are both great on these bikes, and they felt like they stuck to the roads really well with their respective tyre choices. We had an issue with both bikes while we had them in that They gave us warnings that the tyres were running low in pressure. After a few minutes though, the system on both bikes would re-regulate itself, and then it gave the right figures again. Maybe this is something that happens with these bikes. I'm sure some owners will let us know in the comments. Tyres on the GT Pro are Metzeler Turrence TM Nex, and the Rally Pro gets Bridgestone Battle Axe Adventures. Dual Brembo front brakes and Triumph rear brake are excellent on the bikes. I use both brakes when I brake and had no issues. ABS works really well. They've got cornering ABS too, but it's hard to know when that's kicking in because I don't go into a corner skidding with the brakes that much, so I can't really say too much about that. Good to know it's in your back pocket there if you need it though, for safety and all that. I thought I might notice a 21-inch front wheel of the Rally Pro rolling over things much better on the roads than the 19-inch of the GT Pro, but I didn't. Both bikes did feel very different when you're riding them due to the different wheel sizes and suspension travel. On the road, the Rally Pro feels physically taller and doesn't turn anywhere near as good as the GT Pro. Worth saying here though that these are all really obvious things to discuss when a bike has taller wheels and longer travel suspension, but sometimes those things don't translate exactly how they should. When you're riding on tighter roads and coming from one side to the other quickly, you really do notice the Rally Pro going up and down in its travel more, sort of flopping from side to side. Of course, it's fairly significant when you jump from one bike to the other. The GT Pro feels much more planted on the front on the road because of its wheel sizes and less suspension travel. Damping on both these bikes is excellent. You can adjust the GT Pro's rear suspension damping within the menu system, and I found the best place to set it was just a touch closer to Sport so that it wasn't bobbing up and down so much with too much rebound. Neither of these bikes bottom hard while we had them. The GT Pro was much more comfortable to ride on the road because of its lower height. Apparently the Rally Pro's handlebars are positioned 15mm back compared to the GT Pro, but this isn't something I really notice on the road. Turning circle on these bikes is great and you never feel like you really need more. I ride a lot of Triumphs and they're always made very well. Originally I thought the Rally Pro was a 2025 model, but it turns out it's a 2024. No difference really between the 2 years, but it does now have well over 6,000 miles on it, and it's a good reference for how the bike might look after 1 year. The main thing I noticed when I was shooting some B-roll of the bike when I first got it was the bash plate and how discoloured it was, and the main stand had started to rust a bit. Also, the exhaust pipes are quite hidden away in there, and if you're riding it off-road, there's going to be a lot of muck go in there. I think if you owned the bike, you might want to pay extra special attention to that area if you like it to look perfect. Maybe you take the bash plate off when you clean the bike to make sure it was all spotless, if you're into that sort of thing. Worth saying though that this is true of most adventure bikes. Triumph kindly supplied both Tigers with panniers for our trip. The GT Pro's luggage is called the Trekker, and the Rally Pro's is called Expedition. I like how Triumph has specced up each of these bikes, and I think the panniers chosen suit the bikes well. Interesting thing about the Trekker luggage is that it's been designed so that a full-face helmet will fit in the left-hand side pannier, or 2 full-face helmets will fit in the bike's top box. This is good for when there's 2 of you on the bike, so you can leave your helmets with the bike when you stop. Frames the panniers go on are really sturdy, and they look good when the panniers aren't connected. Some don't. I reckon the Expedition ones would be more robust if you're going off-road and would take more abuse. Also, I prefer the top opening style of them so you can just dump stuff in there, squash it down and then close them. With the Trekker ones, I found the best way to load them is to have them off the bike, lay them flat and then squash everything in there, close them down and then put them on the bike. The base plates for each of these top boxes have a little bit of movement in them. I tried tightening both of them up but all of the bolts that hold the brackets were already done right up. Maybe this is just how they're meant to be, but you don't feel the top boxes clinging back and forth on the back like you can on some bikes though. Trekker luggage can have a backrest fitted to it if you're into riding two up. The Expedition set has the backrest on it here. Both pannier systems go on and off super easy. The Trekker one's keyhole on the back of the top box gets a bit dirty, which can make it harder to put the key in. Seals on the Trekker panniers needed to be pressed in when I got them because they'd come out. Just use a plastic thing to poke them in. Can be an issue if you don't notice it, because when you're opening and closing you might cut the seal and you have to get a new one. Both sets of panniers do get a little bit of water in them though if you're riding in the wet through their seals, so that's something to be mindful of. On the motorway with the panniers fully loaded, the engine has more than enough power to run along without feeling stressed at all. On the way up to the Yorkshire Dales, we had winds of up to 50 miles an hour on the motorway, and the bikes felt super stable with the panniers on, and they didn't feel like they were blown around too much at all. Screen on the bike looks skinny, and it could probably be bigger. Someone in the comments section of my first impressions video said they'd upgraded to a Givi screen, which looks alright. I'm sure there are other makes out there too. I'd like to try one of those out, because this is one area that isn't great on the bike. It's not bad, it's just not the best wind protection when you're riding fast. I use the screen up on the motorway and on faster roads and down everywhere else. Also, when it was raining, it was good to put the screen up wherever you were for weather protection. To get the screen up and down, you just push it forward with your hand and move it how you want. I use both of these bikes for going to shoots for my other channel, which is called the Classic Motorcycle channel. When I did, I'd leave the panniers on so I can store my helmet and riding kit in them, so I could change into my normal clothes when I got to shoots. Also, the camera bag strapped really easily to the racks at the back. We rode a lot at night on our trip, and the LED lights were very bright. Front headlight was excellent. Also in the day, the front headlight was very bright. I like front fog lights on bikes because they make you much more visible to other road users. One thing I did notice on the motorway was when I was looking back for Jason in the mirrors is that if he was in view, I could always quickly see him amongst the other cars because the headlight was just so bright, much brighter than the fog lights. One thing I like about the Tigers is that they already come standard with things like heated grips and seats, cruise control, quick shifter, tyre pressure monitoring, fog lights, accessory sockets for the rider and pillion, and a main stand. You have to add a lot of these things to other manufacturers' bikes at an extra charge if you buy them a lot of the time. Before spending time on the bikes, I didn't love how they looked from the front, but now I don't mind it. I can't quite put my finger on what it is. Maybe it's the beak at the front with the headlights and the way that they're shaped. Not quite sure, but it looks a subjective, eh? Just want to show you quickly through the screen so you can get a feel for how it looks in here. First menu item is display. You can see all these things. Didn't use these much. Actually, when I first got the bike, I went in there and just checked they were all right, how I wanted them, and didn't use them again. I did use bike a bit, so main thing I used was tyre pressures. So in there, you can check them as you're riding along when the bike's running. Also coolant. I'd always use that for the first sort of 5 or 10 minutes just to make sure the engine was up to temperature. Trip within this setting, I'd use that a lot. So we've done 977 miles on the Rally Pro so far, and then I'd use this one for fuel if ever I fill up, a bit old fashioned. I'd reset that and see how many miles I'm getting per tank of fuel. And then fuel status. Here you can see your range when the bike's running. So, alright, over with the GT Pro now, and I'll just show you through the menu on this one, a little bit different. All this stuff's the same in the first menu item there. Difference is with the GT Pro you've got preload. So at the moment the bike's got luggage on it, so I've got it set to rider and luggage. But you could do rider and pillion or just rider. or rider, luggage and pillion. And then the damping setting, you can change how that works. So I usually had it around here. I change it depending on how much. If it was rebounding too quickly, I just change it up to there. So this is sort of where I found between there and there was best. Other than that, manual the same. Servicing on the bikes is every 6,000 miles or every 12 months, whichever comes first. Base cost of the GT Pro is $14,095, and for the Rally Pro, $14,695 to reflect the upgrades that bike gets over the other one. Warranty on the bikes is 24 months. Here's my list of accessories I'd add to these bikes if I was speccing them up. Triumph's pannier sets would be a must-have to make the bike as versatile as possible. Tank pad to minimize scratches on the tank from your clothing and things that'll go on both bikes. So for the GT Pro, only other thing I'd add to that would be a sump guard if I needed to take an off-road route so the engine or exhaust wouldn't get damaged. Rally Pro, so 2 additional things I'd add to it would be aluminium radiator guards to stop the debris piercing a hole in the radiator, and tank protection guards. Those side panels look like they could break easily if you drop the bike. So my final verdict here, if I had to pick one, I'd go for the Rally Pro. My personal reasoning is that I do ride a lot of off-road, and with the way that the bike is set up with the spoke wheels, longer travel suspension and bash plate, it would just much more suit my style of riding. The GT Pro is a quicker steerer on the road, but riding fast on the road isn't something I'm really into. My preferred road riding style is flowy and smooth, and with each of these bikes, I can do that. That's it. Thanks for watching.